Okay, big apology for the last video. I uploaded it, thought everything was cool, but I really screwed up on this one. I referenced an author who is, oh boy, sorry about that, who is a Latter-day Saint. His name is Brian C. Hales, and I made a mistake that there's another Brian Hales who is the author of many books on polygamy. And I thought the two were the same, and they're not. So a big apology out there to Brian C. Hales, Hailes. And I can't remember how to spell the other Hales, but anyway, what a nice guy. What a nice guy. I'm holding up his book again. That he sent to me to review. I said, it's not really my cup of tea. And he wrote a nice email back saying, hey, no worries. And so what I want to do, I'm gonna put his email in the comment section. And if you want to reach out to him and see the books that he's written, he's probably one of the kindest guys I've ever run across. Way nicer than I am. But so I want to apologize to him, apologize to you, all out there for getting these two individuals mixed up. So I hope that's sufficient of an apology. Totally on me. Everything totally my fault. And I think you ought to give this guy a chance, this Brian Hales, and see what he has out there. Okay, enough of that. Now, I wanted to talk about in the video that I mainly talked about in this was a presentation given by Elder Pearson. He's the Utah area president. So each area in the world has an area presidency that consists of general authority 70s. Utah is unique because of so many stakes, and it has its own area and own area president. So there was if you remember, those of you that are in Utah, I think it was in December, it was on a fifth Sunday, we had to teach and learn the area presidency, kind of their the area president or the Utah area mission kind of thing. And there were three talks. The presidency gave their talks, and one of them spent the whole time about how we've got to fix racism in Utah. That it's a real problem. I was really bothered by that because I don't see it. And, if it's there, I would love to hear why they felt they needed to do this. Now, typically, my experience is that a lot of these things that come from the public affairs department, that this is what needs to be said. I also find that the public affairs department of the church are probably 5 years behind, what's really going on. And so this racial thing, I think it just seems so out of whack to me. Okay, just to me. And you think, well, why are you saying these things? Why going against? Why? Well, I'll give another example. So I'll include this as well. It's been taken down by the church, but Elder Pearson, President Pearson, I guess maybe you'd call him because he's the Utah area president. He was in Bountiful, Utah, speaking to the youth, but this went out, and he not basically, you'll see the clip. I'll pin it, and you'll be able to see it. Somebody saved a portion of it on YouTube. I was able to find it, and I'll share that bit. But he said there's no need for young men to pray about whether they should go on a mission. The prophet's already stated it, and if the prophet states it, you don't need to pray about it. In fact, it's the wrong thing to do is to pray whether you should go or not. This just doesn't make sense to me. I've been a mission president. We've sent 4 children on missions. I served as a young man. Sue and I served service missions. We should all get that confirmation. We should all get. Now, he did say you can pray for a confirmation. Well, what's he saying? We kind of know what he's saying, but he's angry when he's speaking. He's yelling. And you could just see kind of the look of the kids in the background, the young people. I know from the church news reports, they're saying that there's more missionaries than ever before going out. The one thing I have found is that the church used to break down missionaries, so you'd have missionary service. So you'd have full-time proselyting missionaries, you'd have service missionaries, you'd have like welfare missionaries, you'd have this kind of missionary, all this kind of stuff. And now it appears, it's hard to find out everything, but it appears that it's all lumped together. So yeah. And I don't know if that's a PR thing or not. But one thing I do know is what happened with Elder Pearson is this video got shut down. And I can guarantee you it was the public affairs department that shut that video down of Elder Pearson saying, don't pray about whether to go on a mission or not. And the reason is because there was a huge response. These Sikhs go out on social media and then people are going, what the heck? And so the church reacts to that. The public affairs department reacts to that. They're very reactionary. They do polls. They do surveys. They kind of see what's going on, and then they react. Now, the reason why I bring it up is that I think it was good that people said something. I think it's good that they said something. This isn't an attack on Elder Pearson. I actually know him. I've met him several times. I'm good friends with his nephew. I don't think he's a bad guy, but I do think that there's certain things said that it's okay for people to go, oh, wait a minute, that didn't feel right. And if this is going out, then people, I think, have I shouldn't say just the right, but really a blessing and an opportunity to say, I need a clarification. I need something fixed here. This doesn't seem right. Without these kind of things, continue. And for me, it's not a good thing. So that's one thing. I'll bring that up. I think it's worth seeing. And I had it sent to me, and someone wanted my input on it. A few people actually. The other thing that a few people had input on for me, or asking me input, and Greg Madsen of Quick Media. I'll reference him. You can see the video with him for that, because I'm not going to post it, but it was an LDS church building, and specifically in the Relief Society room, where Muslims were using the Relief Society room for their prayers, where they have their mats and their blankets, and they, are bowing down, praying to Allah in a Relief Society room. And apparently they covered the picture of Jesus that was in the Relief Society room because they don't want to have it's actually similar to how we are with chapels. I grew up with a beautiful painting of Christ on the wall of our chapel, and then something came out where we can't have any of that. Now, a few buildings have been grandfathered. There was one in our mission when Sue and I presided over a mission that was in West Valley, I think in the Granger area, and it had a mosaic picture of Christ, and kind of the backdrop where you'd maybe see like pipes for the organ now, behind the choir seats, and it was just there, and it was beautiful, and they grandfathered that in. So there's a few buildings that still have a depiction of Christ, but I get it. In the endowment rooms in the temple, we don't have pictures of the Savior, but then all through the temple we do. And so, you can worship anywhere in the temple, really, because it's more of a feeling than it is an actual practice or doing something. But anyway, I'm kind of off on that. So the Muslims were allowed. Now this isn't the first this has happened. You can see where if there's Ramadan in a certain area, the church will open up buildings and allow these. Now, Greg, I'm going to disagree with Greg on this big time. He's all for it, thought it was great, reaching out, blah, blah, blah. Here's the problem I see with it. This isn't, against the faith of Islam, but this is totally a PR thing because it's woke. Now, one good listener said, "What does woke mean?" and we take for granted, but woke is like being aware of all the social justice things going on at the time. Whether it's being sympathetic or being involved in the alphabet soup community, and that would be the LGBTQ plus. Being woke would be being sympathetic or being a part of BLM, Black Lives Matter. Being woke would be white shaming or white discrimination against whites. Now that's being woke. That's what you want to do. Is white man bad? Everything they've done is bad. That's kind of wokeism, and it's really. In my opinion, a globalist agenda that gears and influences society in a organized effort to a certain way, a certain belief. This has usually been pushed out. Operation Mockingbird is really. In the United States anyway, was really this source or this way of doing it through the media, through government, through CIA, using the media, using Hollywood to push a certain agenda. Once your eyes are open to it, you can immediately see, they're trying to message me to do things a certain way through advertising. You'll see a certain race of people all the time now, just there all the time, as if that's the only group. Just things like that. So anyway, that's being woke. So this having Muslims worship in an LDS church, not in the chapel, but in the Relief Society room, and providing that. And then getting the message out. That's the church's attempt to be woke, in my opinion. And there's many woke. There's a real woke influence in the church, particularly in departments, the mission department, of course the public affairs. That's all it is. But there's just this element of. We want to be as non-offensive as possible in the worldly sense. So we want to be sympathetic here. We want to have compassion here. That we should always have compassion, right? But that does not mean that you allow your beliefs and your standards and your doctrine to be compromised. And this is what I see happens quite often. Now, Greg Madsen, in his defense, he'll bring up BYU all the time. He'll bring up Deseret Book. He'll bring up these things, but those are extensions of the church. And we just have to realize and see it as members and go, that feels a little uncomfortable, and we need to voice it. So back to Muslims worshiping in LDS buildings. I doubt very seriously. I know it's happened in the past, but this would not be advertised to have say Jewish worship in an LDS building, because that's not very cool right now. Many universities, anti-Semitic, hate the Jewish people, hate Israel, hate everything about Israel. More and more members of the church are getting sucked into this. It's so interesting to see, what's happening in Syria, what's happening in the Middle East, all through the Middle East, and generally speaking, there's an anti-Israel sentiment that permeates the media, and it has its effects in the church. You probably wouldn't see it advertised that the church allowing Jews to worship in their buildings. Now, we allow anybody to come, right? Visitors welcome, right? Most churches have that. Ours doesn't actually have that sign, but we have that where people can come and worship with us. But to actually allow them to do their worship, this is kind of unique, and it sounds good. It sounds good, and I get why Greg is a proponent of this and likes this. I'm not. I don't think it's a good practice to do this, because where do you stop it? Do you just do it depending on the wokeness of society? So right now it's really good to be sympathetic towards Islam, Muslim worship, and so we're going to allow that. But we don't want this other group out there. Now, that's my take on it. I'll reference you to go to Greg's channel on that. It's a couple of videos back, I'm sure by now, and you can kind of see what the setting is in this Relief Society room. The ironic thing about this, though, is that the people that are just so anxious to embrace this kind of thing in the church would be the very people that would shut somebody down who would be speaking up against, say, the LGBT community in a Relief Society meeting, or speaking out against certain things that are taught that aren't popular now in the church, but you have a voice. Those people would be shut down. Look what happened during COVID. If you didn't wear a mask, if you were open about yourself not getting a jab, would you be welcome to worship actually in the church? Many people weren't. We were relegated to be in the way back, and got shouted out by a gospel doctrine teacher for not wearing a mask, even though we were sitting, away and in the back, for not following the prophet. This is interesting dynamic where members of the faith want to go and worship, and yet are in a situation where we're not welcome. Because we might have a little different take on things. We might have a different opinion on things. We just might be a little different, But yet a whole group from a whole different faith are allowed to come in and worship. I just see it as opening the door. Like, where do you stop it? Where do you stop it? Now, you can say, well, they do worship the God of Abraham, but they don't worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And their feelings and their understanding. Here's the other ironic thing. If you go to an actual website of Islam and see how they feel about the the alphabet soup community. and it's laughable because they don't put up with that. They don't put up with it. And yet they're allowed to worship the way they want to worship in an LDS building, and someone else who would have the same feeling about how they feel about the LGBT community that's within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would be less welcome in that same building, in Relief Society, or where the brethren meet, or young women, young men. I don't know. Anyway, it's pretty comical in my opinion. So I think it's a bit hypocritical to say, hey, this is really cool and it's interfaith, it's ecumenical, we love it because it it bridges, it builds bridges and all this kind of stuff. Well, really, in my opinion, it's just it's more of a PR thing, because it's interesting how just these things get sent out, and I doubt very seriously right now there would be any real press on housing, like I said, Jews or some other faith, people practicing Judaism, because it's just not cool right now. In fact, it's like a negative thing. So that's my take on that. Everybody has their own take. For me, it's not a huge deal. I personally, don't look at it like, oh, that should never happen. If people are really in need, yeah, then open it up. But I would say, then let people have some open ideas in actual, Sunday school priesthood relief society, where they might have a slightly different take on things, and yet, not as welcome. And some of you know what I'm talking about. You're in that situation. So that's all I wanted to say on that. Now, this idea of it, there's so many interesting things. If you go, I'll get the exact scriptures, but Amos has some really interesting scriptures and prophecies concerning Gaza, prophecies concerning Lebanon, prophecies concerning Syria that really have been fulfilled. And I'll go over those scriptures. Today I just want to go over some scriptures in Zechariah that really, I think, are pertinent for today, and also our ability to support Israel and support the people of Israel. And it doesn't mean that there isn't corruption in their government. And, it's not saying that Benjamin Netanyahu, everything he does is perfect. Far from that, in my opinion. But it does prophesy of what is going to happen there. And these prophecies aren't prophecies about Islam. They're not prophecies being fulfilled about any other people other than Israel and Judah. Okay, so let's and the other house of Israel. So let's just look at some of these scriptures really quick. Okay, this is Zechariah chapter 1, and I'm going to start in verse 14. Zechariah chapter 1, verse 14. Incidentally, if I'm hoping that we're going to have a trip to Israel sometime in the late winter, early spring, hoping. And there's a walk that we will do that starts at the Mount of Olives and works its way down. And as you start coming down, we'll hit a cave site of tombs. And Zechariah is one of the prophets buried in that tomb. Malachi, I think Amos even. It's pretty awesome. And so I'm hoping that happens. Okay, so I'm in verse 14, chapter 1 of Zechariah. So the angel that communed with me said unto me, Cry thou, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I am jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with a great jealousy. And I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease, For I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. I love this. Verse 16. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, I am returned to Jerusalem with mercies. My house shall be built in it, saith the Lord of hosts, and the line that shall be stretched forth upon Jerusalem. If you look at the footnote of line, and there's another verse where it talks about the line of measurement. This is just the surveying of Jerusalem and how it's going to get rebuilt, and there will be his house. Let's see if I can. I'm going to try to shorten this video a little bit. I'm in verse 10 now of chapter 2 of Zechariah. Verse 10, chapter 2. Sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion, for lo, I am come, and I will dwell in the midst of thee, saith the Lord. And many nations shall be joined to the Lord in that day, and shall be my people, and I will dwell in the midst of thee. Thou shalt know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me unto thee. And the Lord shall inherit Judah. Listen to that. And the Lord shall inherit Judah his portion in the Holy Land, and shall choose Jerusalem again. Be silent, O all flesh, before the Lord, for he is raised up out of his holy habitations. Okay. Chapter 3, verse 9. For behold, the stone that I have laid before Joshua, upon one stone shall be 7 eyes. Behold, I will engrave the graving thereof, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of that land in one day. And that day shall the Lord of hosts in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, shall ye call every man his neighbor under the vine and under the fig tree. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. There's so many verses. There's verses about the 2 prophets that will be slain. These are the olive trees in here. But I'm going to skip over to chapter 6, verse 12. And speak unto him, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold the man whose name is the branch. Now this is interesting because branch is synonymous with Messiah. This is speaking of Jesus Christ. And branch is all capitalized. The word branch is kind of cool. Behold the man whose name is branch, or the branch, and he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. This is really cool because the branch, Jesus himself, is going to build the temple of the Lord. I love that. Even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne, and his counsel of peace shall be between them both. Okay? This is all in Jerusalem. This is all in Jerusalem. I'm going to go to chapter 8 and verse 3. Thus saith the Lord, I am returned unto Zion, and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem shall be called a city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain. And the streets, and thus saith the Lord of hosts, there shall yet old men and old women dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, and every man with his staff in his hand for very age. Meaning old people needing a staff to walk. When my son Jesse and I were in Jerusalem, right as COVID was breaking out, this next verse I wrote in my scriptures while we were there that we witnessed this. And the streets of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in the streets thereof. How endearing is that? Boys and girls. Where do you hear that in scripture? Boys and girls. I think that's one of the rare moments. And they'll be playing in the streets. This is so tender. And Jesse and I saw that. They were kicking soccer balls through these tiny little streets and going into one house because they knew these people, and then going into the next house. And it was just, it was so awesome. Thus saith the Lord host, if it be marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of this people in these days, should it also be marvelous in my eyes, saith the Lord of hosts? If it's going to be a marvelous thing, 1948, the Jewish state created in one day. Okay, 1967, the Six-Day War, it expands, the Temple Mount, all these blessings and restoration, the rebuilding, the turning the desert into a beautiful land, producing all kinds of things. Then verse 7, I love this. And I'm in chapter 8. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will save my people from the east country and from the west country. I will bring them, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God in truth and righteousness. If you look at the heading for this, and I know a lot of the headings for our scriptures, a lot of them are attributed to Bruce R. McConkie and other committees, but let's just read it. It's interesting. The heading for chapter 8 is, in the last days, Jerusalem shall be restored, Judah shall be gathered, and the Lord will bless his people beyond anything of the past. Now, this is interesting because I hear this a lot, that the people in Israel really aren't Jews, and Israel really isn't a country, and it should be Palestine. And I hear this within the church, right? And that the Jews or people that say they're Jewish, they're an Israelite, they kicked the Palestinians out of their rightful land. Well, let's take a look at a couple of things. Just one simple thing is, can you show me a Palestinian ruin of ancient antiquity? Because I can show you, and have been to many ruins of Israelites, of the Jews. Yeah, and they're all over, from the Golan Heights all the way down to the southern end tip, towards Saudi Arabia. You can't deny that there weren't synagogues and menorahs and all the basis of worship. And yet, you don't find ancient Palestinian ruins. This is fairly recent, really. Okay, so just to say that. Okay, now a couple of more verses that I want to bring up. This is really, I really love this because there's so many prophecies. When Christ said, "I didn't come to do away with the law," I don't think that's the right phrase, but I came to fulfill the law. The law is the Torah, and the law is the prophecies about the Messiah. And Christ said, I came to fulfill those prophecies. That's what that's about. And there's so many prophecies. Here's one right here. This is in chapter 9, verse 9. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding upon an ass, and upon a colt, the foal of an ass. Now, this has reference to the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, Palm Sunday, where he's riding. Right? He says, "Go get this for me," and down through the Kidron Valley, up through the gates, and he rides in the palm leaves. Right? This is where my name came from, Palmers. The palm leaves. Signifying a divine king, and from ancient Great Britain, those that made the crusade, or the pilgrimage, I should say, the Crusaders protecting them from Great Britain and other places in Europe to Jerusalem, they would bring a palm leaf back to prove that they made the pilgrimage, and then they became palmers, and that's where my name came from. So that's kind of cool. But think of this. This prophecy could also be when Joseph and Mary left Nazareth and entered the city. They entered Jerusalem because they went through Jerusalem to get to Bethlehem. and riding on a donkey, right? On an ass, as an unborn child. So that's kind of cool. I think of that. Let's, there's so many good verses here, but I want to kind of shorten this up a little bit. This is chapter 11. Zechariah, this is the heading, speaks messianically, Messiah shall be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. It shall be cast to the potter in the house of the Lord. Verse 13 in chapter 11, and the Lord said unto me, cast it unto the potter a goodly price, that I was prized at of them. And I took the 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord. Is this amazing or what? That Matthew 27:9. Now, you have the Kidron Valley coming down, you have the Temple Mount here, and then you have the Hinnom Valley, and they do meet. But the Hinnom Valley is where the potter's field. This is where Judas hung himself, and also where Caiaphas is buried. His tomb is actually a stall for animals. It was just kind of interesting. Nobody really knows. You have to kind of study it to find it out. But the potter's field prophesied 30 pieces of silver. This is where this would take place. Totally fulfilled. Everything fulfilled to the T. Verse 12, or chapter 12, verse 2. Zechariah chapter 12, verse 2. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. Folks, think of this. You might not like how it took place. You might think, well, these people are evil, far from perfect. Well, the Lord works through so many different people to fulfill his promises. You know, many people were evil. The promise of the 30 pieces of silver and being betrayed was Judas. Was he a great guy? Did he make an awful mistake? I would say, yeah. You could. You know, I know there's a lot of people who justify and oh, Judas didn't really know what he's doing. Whatever you want to say, but ultimately, you'd have to admit that he betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Well, that prophecy was fulfilled through him. So you could say the same thing. Oh, the Israeli government, they're all corrupt. All Jews are corrupt. All blah, blah, blah. There's been a replacement theology. You know, you have people like Candace Owens, Mark Dice, Alex Jones, to some degree, even Tucker Carlson. And they really hate Israel. They hate the Jews. And all of them believe in the replacement theology that the Jews have been replaced. They've lost their standing with the Lord, and they've been replaced by Christians. And many Christian denominations teach this. It even is infiltrated within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where the Jews are no longer it, we're it, you know. This says otherwise, right? Okay. And in that day, I'm in verse 3 now, and in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. All the people of the earth will be gathered against Israel and Jerusalem. And those people, this is happening, right? In that day, saith the Lord, I will smite every horse with astonishment, and his rider with madness. And I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah, and will smite every horse of the people with blindness. And the governors, listen to this, and the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength, the Lord of hosts their God. In that day will I make governors of Judah like an hearth of fire among the wood, and like a torch of fire in the sheaf. And they shall devour all the people round about on the right hand and on the left. And Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. I'm going to read another one here, verse 10. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication. And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him, as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him, as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. And verse 6 of chapter 13, and one shall say unto him, What are these wounds in thine hands? Then he shall answer, Those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. Still continues to call them friends. Can you feel how endearing these verses are, how touching they are? And even though they did this to him, it wasn't all. His disciples were all Jewish. They were all Israelites, and his apostles, and most of the disciples, right? Okay, I'm going to go to verse 8 of chapter 13. And it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. And I will bring the third part through the fire, and will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried. And they shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, It is my people, and they shall say, The Lord is my God. Oh, I love this. The heading for this one is, The Jews shall gain forgiveness at the second coming. They shall ask Jesus, What are these wounds in thine hands? The remnant tried and refined shall be his people. Okay, we're getting close to the end of this here. I want to read this. For I will gather, this is chapter 14, verse 2. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of my people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem, on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof towards the east and towards the west. And there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove towards the north and half towards the south. I wonder how the Jerusalem Center is going to fare when that happens, because it's to the north of the Mount of Olives. There's going to be something there. And it shall come to pass, this is verse 6 of 14, it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night, but it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. And it shall be in that day that living waters shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them towards the former sea, and half of them towards the hinder sea. In the summer and in the winter shall it be. It rhymes. It's beautiful. Okay. Now, this last thing is kind of the negative thing that happens to those who go against Israel, go against Jerusalem, and go against Judah. Verse 12 of chapter 14. And this day, okay, so the heading on this, at the second coming, the Lord shall fight for Israel. His feet shall stand upon the Mount of Olives. He shall be king over all the earth. Plague shall destroy the wicked. Now listen to this, verse 12. And this shall be the plague wherein the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. So you might want to think twice about your allegiances. Okay, here's the plague. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouths. And it shall come to pass that in that day that a great tumult from the Lord shall be among them, and they shall lay hold every one on the hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor. And Judah also shall fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver, and apparel in great abundance. And so shall be the plague of the horse of the mule, of the camel, and of the ass, and all the beasts that shall be in these tents in this plague. And it shall come to pass that every one that is left of all the nations which come against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Is that awesome or what? The Feast of Tabernacles. Okay, so, and it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. So we're going to be keeping the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, look, I bring this all up because it gives perspective as to what is going on. These events are preceding the second coming, and then Christ comes and basically saves his people. We need to be aligned with Judah, Jerusalem, Israel, and when we think of gathering scattered Israel, okay, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob's name's changed to Israel. He has 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. I think we might want to, of course, the gospel of Jesus Christ is for everyone, regardless. But specifically, Ephraim is called to gather scattered Israel. Okay? Think of who that is and who it isn't. Okay, think of who that is and who it isn't. Now, when from 2015 to 2018, we presided over Salt Lake City West Mission, and we were given specific instructions on those that were Muslims worshiping with the idea of Islam, Muhammad, all that. And we were told not to teach anyone who was, unless they were an adult living by themselves. Because if they were part of a family, their life would be in jeopardy if they were teaching. So this is the interesting thing. You don't really hear about radical Christians or radical Jews. You hear about Orthodox and other things, but you don't really hear about terrorist Jews, terrorist Christians. Okay. Incidentally, in Syria, the Christians are really in crossfires of what's going on, and so we got to be so careful and praying for those Christians in the Middle East, all through the Middle East. But radical Islam is not just a small fraction of the people. I hear this all the time. It's just a small fraction. We can't judge a whole, Well, that small fraction is millions of people and hotbeds, from Indonesia, to the Middle East, all over the world, fractions in every country, really, of radical Islam. And so you can't just put that aside and say it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So when you're in a position of leadership or missionary effort, there's specific rules. Now I was out at 2018. That might have changed. I don't know. But as of that time, we had very strict instructions. To not endanger the lives of people. Why would that be? Why would that, teaching the gospel of peace of Jesus Christ, why would that be a danger if there's just a small fraction of Islam that is opposed and that you're an infidel and that you should be eliminated? If that's the case, that wouldn't be a policy if it's just a small fraction, but it was everyone. And we actually had a few situations that way where, you know what, we know you're 18 or over, but you're with parents or family, and we're not going to teach you. We're not going to teach you. That's not gathering scattered Israel, okay? And you're called to bring to pass the gathering of mine elect, for mine elect hear my voice and harden not their hearts. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people of the Islamic faith and that aren't joining. In fact, there's some interesting things going on. Most and we actually had a bus driver, but if you look at it, many people of particularly Arab descent that are Islamic, they're having dreams and they're having visions, and Christ is in those dreams and Christ is in those visions, and they are being taught that way and coming unto Christ. It's beautiful. One for Israel. You can go on their YouTube channel, One for Israel. It's just awesome because they're teaching both Arabs and Jews, Muslims and Jews, the gospel of peace of Jesus Christ. And they're not Latter-day Saints. They're not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They're a Christian, but they're Messianic Jews. But they're taking the gospel to everyone, and it's just an awesome thing. So I think that's it for my presentation today. Again, apologies to Brian C. Hales, and look, I screwed up, and I'm so sorry I did that. So just so you know, there's a Brian Hales that has been on Quick, Greg Madsen. He's been on Jacob Hansen, and they all love him. He's kind of the guru of that. Joseph Smith preached and practiced polygamy. I thought, ironically, that this was the same guy, and it's not. Different guy. Both LDS, both authors of books, but totally different guy. And so I just thought it was kind of ironic because I prior to getting this book, I didn't even put two and two together. And so that's kind of what happened there. But anyway, I think that's it for this video. God bless. Hopefully it's helpful. I'll put the link to BC Hales, to his email, so that you can check out anything you want and he'll respond to you. And also put a link to that video of Elder Pearson telling missionaries, young men, to not pray about going on a mission. God bless. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.